Donald Trump is reportedly seriously considering boots on the ground in Iran, and this isn't necessarily the most surprising news ever, since he's been pretty open about the fact that he doesn't have the yips about the prospect of putting boots on the ground. Nonetheless, this would be a significant escalation, and things could very quickly spiral out of control, and lots of people would be murdered as a result of this idiotic decision. But let's get to the news story here. I've got some more commentary afterwards. NBC News reports Trump has privately shown serious interest in U.S. ground troops in Iran. The president's private comments have not focused on a large-scale ground invasion of Iran, but rather on the idea of a small contingent of U.S. troops that would be used for specific strategic purposes. Trump has discussed the idea of deploying ground troops with aides and Republican officials outside the White House, while outlining his vision for a post-war Iran in which Iran's uranium is secure and the U.S. and a new Iranian regime cooperate on oil production, similar to how the U.S. and Venezuela are, the sources said. Interesting. The article continues, publicly, Trump has not ruled out putting U.S. boots on the ground in Iran, though the war has so far consisted only of an air campaign. His private discussions about the idea show a president perhaps more willing to consider taking such a step than his private comments on the issue so far have suggested. Any deployment of American troops inside of Iran could increase the scale and scope of the war and escalate the risks to American forces. And of course to Iranian civilians too, which is a lesser discussed fact in US media. But the fact that he's seriously considering this indicates that he bit off a little bit more than he could chew. He did not know what he was getting himself into, and he severely underestimated Iran's military capability. He would not already be considering boots on the ground if that were not the case. And there are several indications that the U.S. is completely overwhelmed in the region. They did not expect Iran to put up such a huge fight. He thought that this would be another Venezuela where you get in, take out their leader, and then you've got, a cooperative regime. That's not the way that the Iran government is structured. I mean, taking out the supreme leader does nothing because this is a decentralized government. So he fundamentally misunderstood the beast that he was trying to slay. Nonetheless, it's going bad because the Shahad missiles that the Iranian government is firing, they are very fast, they're cheaper to produce, and when you compare that to U.S. interceptors that are much more difficult to produce, much more costly, well, that kind of goes to show you why Iran may have an edge. And that's not me saying that. This is now being admitted on Fox News of all places. Just like, listen to this. This is crazy that they're letting somebody say this.
Well, I think the discussion is how do we plus up our counter drone defenses to, continue to strike down these drones, because clearly some of them are getting through, obviously more than we wanted to. We're seeing more drones penetrate our defenses than I think expected. We should be really honest with ourselves about that. That brings up, frankly, a larger issue that I've been talking about on this network for years. We have our critical installations around the world have been vulnerable. There are people in some of our own government offices who have failed the American people in purchasing failed equipment. That's why we're seeing some of these Shahid drones get through. A cheap $20,000 Shahid forcing us to burn multi-million-dollar interceptors, starting fires currently at oil facilities and U.S. embassies. That's unsustainable math. Marco Rubio said the other day we only make 6 to 7 interceptors per month at the tune of $1 million a piece. That doesn't make sense. He probably doesn't know that there are probably parts of the government acquisition cycle that are still a mess. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of the Department of War's procurement over the last few years to put counter drone systems, but the reality is that we're seeing right now there are gaps.
Now, I'm pretty sure that the Trump regime is aware of this, hence why there's talk of the Defense Production Act being used so that way we can accelerate the production of interceptor missiles. But this just goes to show you that Trump didn't do his homework and Iran did. After the 12-day war back in June or July of last year, it's been a while, but months ago, they were attacked by the United States and Israel, and they've had time to prepare for every single scenario, and they very clearly did their homework, whereas Donald Trump seemingly invaded on a whim. It looks as if he was goaded into this war with Israel, and Netanyahu almost certainly did not tell him the extent of Iran's capabilities. Because, when you look at Trump and Netanyahu, they're both evil, but one is very clearly more intelligent. Netanyahu is able to play Trump with a fiddle because Trump is a dumb fuck, and Netanyahu, as evil as he is much more intelligent. So Trump had no clue what he was getting himself into, and now it's gone so bad that the Iranians are saying, no more negotiations. We're done negotiating because we just can't trust the United States government. And with regard to the prospect of boots on the ground, the foreign minister to Iran is now saying, bring it on. he's daring them to put boots on the ground because they are prepared. They've prepared for this scenario. They've prepared for every single scenario. And because that's the case, again, if Trump does this, if you actually send boots to the ground, it's not going to go better than the air war because Iran has prepared. So he is sending U.S. troops to die for Israel for seemingly no good reason. I guess he wants to take the oil, but if you think that that's worth the cost in lives, then I don't know what to say. But one good sign is that U.S. service members, they don't actually seem to want to do this. Mike Prysner, who is the executive director for the Center on Conscience and War, says he just spoke with a mother of a service member in his unit. They were given one last call home before having to turn in their phones. He told his mom that they were going boots on the ground tonight. So this is another indication that Trump is serious about putting boots on the ground, but not confirmation. Anyways, Prysner continues, he told her his commander said that they were doing this to bring about the second coming of Christ. Very normal shit for a commander to be saying, by the way. I can also confirm that they did not tell them this was a combat deployment until it was too late. Everyone was told that they were only going to training. So they are lying to U.S. service members, not saying this is a confirmation that the U.S. is invading, just that at least one soldier told their parent this before losing all access to communication. Now, Prysner explains that he was part of the buildup to the invasion of Iraq during February and March of 2003. And, it's very reminiscent of that. It doesn't prove that the U.S. is putting boots on the ground as we speak, but it is a definitive sign that they are indeed preparing to. And right now, Prysner says that they're weighing many factors. Now, the Center on Conscience and War says that they got a call yesterday from a service member facing deployment who is not only filing for conscientious objector now, but reports a widespread opposition to the Iran war within their unit. And he's going to be sharing their number with everybody else. Now, they follow up saying that if you agree that Trump's war on Iran is wrong, you don't have to participate. They can help you explore options if you call 1-800-379-2679. And I would implore you to share this number with everyone. If you know a service member or you know somebody with family who could be deployed to Iran, let them know that they don't actually have to die for Israel in Iran. Because if they invade, if this is a ground invasion, that is very dangerous, to put it mildly. And on top of that, even if they survive, they are going to be expected to commit atrocities. We're talking war crimes, things that they can be prosecuted for. And this is not something that they should be doing. So I would implore you to share that number far and wide, because they need to know that they don't actually have to do this just because Donald Trump says that they have to do it. Now, with regard to the threat that Iran poses to us, I want you to keep in mind that U.S. media is trying to make it seem as if there is a possibility, however small, that we could be in danger because of this war. Now, blowback is, of course, a possibility, but I think that the way that the Trump administration, regime rather, is handling this is very curious. So here's what Pete Kegsbreth, Secretary of War Crimes, said on 60 Minutes.
The president has an incredible knack at knowing how to mitigate those risks. And so the American people can rest assured.
I don't know, something about that seems like famous last words to me. Now, he said that in response to a question about whether or not Russia was helping Iran in some way and whether or not Trump was prepared for that. I don't think that would be earth-shattering news, seeing as how the U.S. helped our ally Ukraine when Russia invaded them. So it's not shocking to think that Russia would help their ally Iran now that we've invaded Iran. But I think that to just rule out any blowback is idiotic. Of course, you have to consider everything if you actually do want to protect not just U.S. service members, but U.S. citizens. But here's what Trump is doing to stop that for some reason. So the Daily Mail, of all places, take what they see with a grain of salt. Nonetheless, they're reporting that Trump's White House is blocking top U.S. intelligence agencies from warning law enforcement across the country about rising threats to the homeland tied to his war with Iran. They say that the FBI, Homeland Security, and the National Counterterrorism Center were preparing to put out a joint intelligence statement on Friday to state and local authorities, alerting them of a heightened threat due to the ongoing war in Iran. But Trump blocked that. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that a threat is imminent. In fact, I would say that the probability of Iran hurting us on U.S. soil is very low. But again, blowback is always a possibility. An individual could be really mad about this war with Iran. Perhaps they have relatives in Iran that's dying. Perhaps it's an American that just opposes it. And whenever a war breaks out, you have, these national agencies coordinating with local law enforcement to just help them prepare in the event anything happens. It's a precautionary measure, but Trump is saying, no, they don't need to prepare. Now, again, I don't want to, put this idea into the universe that we're at risk, because the individuals who are truly at risk are the Iranian people right now, and we should be concerned about their well-being. But the prospect of like America facing real blowback because of this, it's not out of the question. 9/11 was the result of blowback, right? And I'm not saying we're going to experience that, but like, of course, it's incumbent on government to prepare for all scenarios. And Trump is saying, no, we're not going to prepare for that. And to me, the only reason why he would do this is because I think that he thinks that he would stand to gain from something like this. Now, this is conjecture. I have no idea. I can't get in his head, nor would I want to. But Trump, I think, believes that in the event somebody were to retaliate against the United States on U.S. soil, we're not talking bases in Gulf countries. We're talking like in a state, Montana, New York, something like that. He would love that, I think, because not only would that give him a good justification to ramp up, it would probably get more Americans on board. Sunken cost fallacy. Well, they bombed us here at home, or somebody attacked us, an individual, and now we really do have to finish what Trump started. Or on top of that, in the event there was an imminent threat to the United States and there was an attack on U.S. soil because of what we're doing in Iran, Trump could use that in a plethora of ways. He could say, look, now we have to shut down the election in 2026 because, look, we're at war and they've come here. They're in our borders, and it just could get very ugly. So this, to me, like, I'm not talking about this because I want you to worry. I just want you to know that Donald Trump very clearly is an opportunist, and he will use anything he can. And this is kind of one of those situations where he might want to put Americans in harm's way just so he can benefit from it in some way. Nonetheless, the regime has said, actually, Americans have nothing to worry about. And what Pete Hegseth said raised some eyebrows because of the way that he said it.
The only ones that need to be worried right now are Iranians that think they're going to live.
Keep in mind, he did not differentiate between the Iranian people and combatants. He just said Iranians who think they're going to live. That is what a war criminal would say. And he already said that they're not going to abide by these stupid rules of engagement. So he is basically broadcasting his intent to commit war crimes. Okay? So I agree with him in the sense that, yes, it is Iranians that should be the most concerned, because Americans, for the most part, we are privileged. It will affect us, but in an economic sense. But we're not going to have to worry about bombs being dropped on our head. So the real price that's being paid is by the innocent people in Iran. And I think he's just like, the fact that he's flippantly talking about it that way, as if their lives don't matter, is really, really grotesque, right? And we should always, be concerned about the toll in human life, because for whatever economic cost we're going to face, it pales in comparison to losing a loved one or dying because some country decided to invade you. Now, with regard to the economic cost, there will indeed be an economic cost. Some of you might have already noticed that the cost at the gas pump is higher. And to that, Trump just said, if gas prices rise, they rise. He's straight up saying that. But it's worse, because Suleiman Almand reports Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar are discussing withdrawing from contracts with the U.S. and canceling future investment commitments in the U.S. to alleviate some of the economic strain imposed upon them by the Iran war. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because these Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, they are heavily invested in American tech companies. We're talking billions of dollars into Google, into Apple, into Oracle, and they are invested specifically in AI. Now, as you all know, the AI bubble is around $1.7 trillion, and the stock market value of these tech companies is so high because of the theoretical projected future profits that could be made. But if the well dries up and these Gulf countries are forced to pull back on their investments because now the U.S. can't defend them like they said that they would, and they have to focus on their own defense, what happens? Well, that AI bubble bursts, and we are looking at a serious economic crisis. We're talking recession, potentially Great Depression, all because Trump decided to invade Iran. So just to rephrase what I just said, Trump may have pulled the thread that unwinds our entire economy simply by invading Iran. And I say simply not to downplay it, but by doing this one thing, he may have knocked over the first domino that leads to the collapse of the U.S. economy. Because if the AI industry goes tits up, the economy goes tits up. But things could spiral out of control even further because the Iranian foreign minister is reporting that the U.S. actually committed a blatant and desperate crime by attacking a freshwater desalination plant on Keshem Island. Water supply in 30 villages has been impacted. Attacking Iran's infrastructure is a dangerous move with grave consequences, and this last sentence here is chilling. The U.S. set this precedent, not Iran. In other words, the U.S. bombed our desalination plant, and now desalination plants in Gulf countries aligned with the U.S. are fair fucking game. So what does this mean? Well, if you look at the water shortage in the Middle East, it is severe, and it's getting worse every single year due to anthropogenic climate change, and they rely on desalination plants for drinkable, potable water. But now that the United States have decided to resort to bombing desalination plants, Iran is going to retaliate and do the same. So this is going to spiral into not just a, war between Donald Trump and Iran. It is going to turn into a massive crisis over water. Because once people start losing their drinkable water, shit hits the fan. And it's not just that the war would get much more bloody. It's that this would trigger a severe refugee crisis. And it's ironic because the Republicans, who are the most averse to refugees coming into this country, they keep doing things that create refugee crises. Like, do you think that people in the Middle East are just going to stay there if they don't have drinking water? No, it's a human reaction to want to survive. So they're going to migrate if their desalination plants are attacked, and that leads to water shortages. So Trump has no fucking idea what he got us into, what he got himself into, what he got the world into, because just within a week, you can see how there are a million different ways that this can get so much worse and how things could spiral out of control. And the one thing that's really giving me worry that I can't get out of my mind is the fact that it's very likely that Trump is going to get more desperate as things get worse for him, both politically and militarily. Because, the air war wasn't necessarily going well. Iran was able to capably defend themselves. So what is he doing? He's now considering boots on the ground. He's now bombing desalination plants, which is a serious escalation because we don't want to start fucking with the water supply in the Middle East. If they do it, Iran will do it. It's a tit for a tat. And he's raising the tit for tat. He's playing a game of chicken with Iran, not expecting them to retaliate, expecting them to blink first, but they're not. And I don't want to put this out into the universe, but he could get so desperate that he starts getting crazier. He's already talking about invading Cuba. He already launched a special military operation in Ecuador after he invaded Iran. So if things get so bad for him and it looks like he can't get a win after he does all these side quests, invading other countries, and it still looks really bad for him, his approval rating tanks, would it be out of the question to think that he could use an atomic bomb in Iran? Would he use nuclear weapons? This is somebody who's a madman. I think that would be something that we have to consider because this individual is unhinged. So lawmakers need to not drag their fucking feet and they need to impeach him. There needs to be the 25th Amendment. I mean, this is all like wishful thinking, right? But I don't trust him. It's not going well for him, and we see how bad it's already getting after 1 week. So if it goes even worse for him, after he escalates, things could get a lot worse a lot quicker. And it's already been so fucking bad. As Dropsite News reports, they've bombed 20 hospitals in Iran. This is a war crime. Each one of these hospitals is a war crime. You are not allowed to target civilian infrastructure, and that's what they're doing. They bombed 4 schools, including the U.S. bombing that killed 180 girls. And I don't just want to gloss over these war statistics with you. I want to show you the human toll. So this is the last photo of Mikhail Murdaragi. He is a 3rd grade student killed in the reported U.S.-Israeli strike on a primary school in Manab, Iran. And this kid is just like the embodiment of innocence. He could be my nephew. He was somebody's whole universe, and he's dead now. He's dead because of Donald Trump's war in Iran. Now, on that note, there's this 10-year-old Iranian girl named Manab and her brother, and both of her parents were killed. And based on the translation here from Class Report, it seems like she witnessed her dad die as he was trying to save her mother. We're talking about innocent children here who should not be subjected to this. Iranian children are just as innocent as American children. These are children. But the Trump regime is targeting schools and targeting hospitals. And I can't get over the fact that this the new norm. It's not like the United States ever really respected the rules of war and the Geneva Conventions and whatnot. Look at what we did in Iran. But they're just so nakedly committing war crimes in front of all of our faces, and Americans are focused on the cost of gasoline, which, I mean, if any Iranian could trade places with Americans and just worry about the cost of, groceries and gas, I think they probably would. So I just want us to remember that there is a real price being paid, and it's in blood. It's children like Mikhail and that little girl who are having to pay for Trump's disgusting bloody war. So I just wanted to give you some updates. Things are going south really quickly here, and I couldn't wait to talk about this until Monday. So I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. I'm sorry for putting so much bad news on you, but I think we have to focus on what's happening, because if this does turn into a ground invasion, it's going to be so bad, and Trump can't fathom how bad that's going to be. And I would say that he can't fathom how bloody it'll get, but he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care about anyone dying, Iranians, U.S. service members. He couldn't care less about that. It's just about, how do I get that win? The ends justify the means. So this would be the worst case scenario here. And it looks like that's already coming to fruition just a week after the invasion. So buckle up, because it's going to be a tumultuous couple of weeks, my friends.